In this video, we're going to look at what is probably the most useful type of EQ, and that's cohesive EQ. So cohesive EQ is when you use EQ strategically to carve out parts of the sonic spectrum for each instrument to inhabit. This is especially important when two instruments occupy the same frequency area, like lows. So here I have these two kick tracks. One is kick in and one is kick out, and the bass guitar track. And so, kick and bass, if they're done really well, they support and enhance one another. But sometimes, depending on the way they're recorded or even the way the music is arranged or the players are performing, those two instruments can get in each other's way because they're both low instruments. So what I have here is I have three EQ37 bands. And by the way, if you have been using Pro Tools, you might know that like when you open a plugin, it closes the other plugin. If you want to stop that from happening, you can click this red targeting icon and just turn that off. And now when you click another plugin, that one stays up. It will hide behind it, so you have to move the plugins out of the way. But it's just a handy tip to know that targeting icon. So here I have these three EQ plugins, and let's look at this. So first, the two kick drums here, we have low end boost in both of them, and we have a little high end boost, and that was to bring out the body of the kick and the snap of the beater on the head. In reality, if I were mixing this just, like for a client, I probably would not be using EQ37 band, on my kick. I would probably be using like a Pultec style EQ P1A. But I'm using it for this video series because it's easier to see what's being boosted and what's being cut. But you can still get good results with this. So I have low end boost and high end boost for those, and not a lot, just like a few dB, right? A few decibels. And then for the kick out, I have this low mid boost, and I don't have that here. In fact, I have a mid cut here, and I don't have that here. I do have a high mid cut in the kick track here, but not here. So they're not the exact same curve because, the mics are positioned differently. And this is what makes them sound good and fit in the mix, in my opinion here. But the real thing we want to look at is how they interact with this bass guitar. So for the bass guitar, I have this high pass filter on. And if you notice, it's set to 72 Hertz, and the boosts I have in my low end of the kick drum, right? I have a boost at 63 on this one and a boost at 96. So this whole area, most of it, is completely cut out of the bass guitar. I'm leaving space for the kick drum to come through in the mix without having to increase the volume and fight that bass. Next, I have a sort of a wide boost to add body to the bass guitar here. It's not a lot, just a few dB. And then I have a small boost here in the high mids, and then also a boost in the highs. But if you look carefully at where I'm boosting, it's a different frequency range than where the kick drums are, right? So this is like around 5 kilohertz. This is 4.5 kilohertz. This is all the way up at 8.5 kilohertz. So even though they're kind of like closer on the graph, they're really not that close. Those are completely different frequency ranges. And so, they're not going to interact with each other except to fit together better. So the goal of cohesive EQ is to make your instruments fit together like puzzle pieces. Where you boost a frequency in one, you might cut it in another, especially if they occupy the same sonic space. Let's listen to this, how they sound before and after EQ. So first thing I'm going to do is use Command Option click to disable all these, and then I'll put them back in. And there is some snare bleed, but if you kind of ignore that and concentrate on the kick sound, you'll hear how it's much more cohesive now, right? It sticks together better with this EQ. Now that's a subtle difference, but it's an important one because as soon as we start to add compression and any kind of saturation, or if there's time-based effects that come into play, this clarity will be enhanced. And if it wasn't clear, then, those effects would add mud to it. So you can't just think about the EQ stage. You got to think holistically about the whole mix. But this is an example of cohesive EQ. Let's look at another one. Let's look at the keyboard EQ and the vocal EQ. So here you can see I have high-pass filters on both tracks, but they are at different ranges. The keyboard is going to be wider than the vocal, right? The keyboard's going to have more lows. The vocal doesn't go down that low. I have added some sparkles up here in the vocals by boosting the highs just a bit, around 5.5K. I don't have that for the keyboard. For the keyboard, the only thing I've done is add a very small amount of boost at 2.69, basically 3 kilohertz or 2.5 kilohertz. And I've actually cut that in the vocals. So there's a complementary sort of EQ curve there. And this helps the vocals get out of the way of the keyboard and the keyboard get out of the way of the vocals. Also, the arrangement helps too. So let's hear these together.
Very superstitious writings on the wall. Very superstitious ladders about to fall.
Kind of fighting for attention there.
13-month-old baby.
To my ears, that just makes the vocal more centered. It makes the keyboards not fight, makes the keyboard part not fight with the vocal. So this is just a couple of examples of cohesive EQ. It's hard to make recommendations about cohesive EQ except to use your ears and find what instruments might be fighting one another in the mix. And instead of turning one up or down or something like that, use cohesive EQ to help clear up the mix. Also panning helps too. But between panning and cohesive EQ, there is a spot for every instrument in your mix.